And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
Happy New Year, brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. It's time for another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice. We're calling this a Week 13 potpourri, waiver wire / mailbag edition, all-encompassing episode of the podcast. Nick Alberga and Pete Jensen with you. Anna Dua had to take a couple days off. She had to decompress. She's out celebrating her birthday, so happy birthday to Anna. What's going on, Pete? How are you, buddy?
What's up, Nick? Yeah, we're going back old school, just the two of us, like the good old days. We miss Anna for sure, but she's out somewhere in Arizona partying and having some drives in self-driving vehicles. That's like my worst nightmare. But Skip, of course, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
At NHL.com/fantasy, where you can check out this week's list. There's just so much to cover over the holiday season, Pete. And there's a lot of good players playing really, really well, which is great to see. And the name that popped up on your list, I'm like, oh my goodness. Warren Foegele. He has played, the best stretch of his NHL career right now, I'd say, with the Oilers, right?
Right, and remember when they made the coaching change, Nick, to Chris Knoblauch, we were talking about the McDavid impact because they were a coach and player formation in the OHL, and even we were mentioning Connor Brown, but the forgotten guy was Warren Foegele. I guess he also played under Knoblauch in the OHL for Erie, so that's an interesting wrinkle there. Another guy that you've been harping on for a while, same type of storyline, is Scott Perunovich, and he has the connection with Bannister. So we're starting to see even, a month later in some of these cases where the guys are benefiting from coaching changes. It
is important to bring that up when there are coaching changes, and just in general, I think in sports, any connection you can draw, so, to a player potentially boosting their fantasy value, I think you have to look at that. So that's a good point of view to bring up, the connection there to the Erie Otters in those days of Chris Knoblauch. The last 6 games for Warren Foegele, 9 points, 19 shots on goal. And again, it certainly helps when you have that monster game the way he did on New Year's Eve. But great stuff all around, because again, it's becoming more and more difficult to find sort of these guys, depth-wise on the waiver wire right now. So you look there, you look at Boston and Jake DeBrusk. We saw the Seattle Kraken pull out a very, very impressive 3-0 victory in the Winter Classic. A guy like Morgan Geekie, a former Seattle Kraken in the mix there too. So there's some names out there that could help. Eeli Tolvanen, who stands out from the list this week, Pete?
Well, we've mentioned this guy before, but the absolute star of the Winter Classic, Joey Daccord, right? Backstop in the first ever shutout in an outdoor game. And this guy has been on a roll for quite a while. 6-0-2 in his past 8 games. Remember a couple of shows ago when I was saying there is an opportunity for this guy to emerge as the full-time starter? He couldn't be doing anything possibly more than what he's done with Philip Grubauer out. This is the starter moving forward. They're playing lockdown defense in Seattle, and they've been one of the hottest teams of the past couple of weeks of the season, Nick.
Look, I'll be honest. I've goofed on this guy, but he has been cooking big time. I did not expect Seattle to go in there in the Winter Classic, pull out that win against Vegas, who I think obviously is a perennial threat to win the Stanley Cup for a second straight season. But 4 straight wins for Daccord. He's allowed 4 goals in those 4 outings, so definitely I think a must pick up right now. He's just taken over everybody in Seattle as the number 1 goaltender, and they're playing, way better hockey. So certainly look there. And I think in general of the podcast this week, I know Bobby wants to chime in, and Bobby, I'm just adding a lot of goaltending situations around the league. So Daccord's a really good look here.
He's been good, and Pete will chime in on him, but Dave Hakstol comes on NHL at the Rink. If you go back and listen to that interview, seriously, go back and listen to Hakstol. I mean, there's just no panic in his voice, because he talked about how it was really just a bounce of the puck here and there, that they were playing well. Everything seemed to go right their way last year, and this year has been a little bit more of a grind. Now, I'm not saying they're a playoff team, but Dave Hakstol, no panic with that guy. Another coach that really has, you listen to these guys talk for 10, 15 minutes, and it makes a difference in the way I'm judging Dave Hakstol just based off that interview on NHL at the Rink.
Well, the style they're playing, Bobby, shot attempts percentage, top 10 in the league, offensive zone time percentage, that's an edge stat, top 10 in the league, even when they were, down in the dumps a little bit. And when you look at their 5-on-5 shooting percentage as well, so much room for improvement. Even with them improving now, they're still like bottom 10 in the league. So they're going to come at you hard. I think that Seattle in the playoffs, Nick, last year, remember how they were given Colorado fits, Dallas fits. Yeah. These juggernaut teams didn't know what to do with them. So if they sneak in, it's a dangerous team that nobody's going to want to play against in the Kraken.
Well, that's exactly what happened too. Is that we talked about it ad nauseum with New Jersey in the offseason, the hunt versus the hunter, right? I think the fact that nobody really expected that from Seattle, now the expectation is there, and that's why I think the timid start for them. But certainly the last couple games, some of their better players have started to cook in a big time way. They're getting healthier, which is great to see. So definitely on the periphery is the Seattle Kraken. Getting back to the point too, Pete, some of the goaltenders here that are must-watch, certainly with Philip Gustafsson and others banged up, and in the minors as well in Ilya Samsonov's case.
Right, and I saw that Nico Dawes got a start and a win against the Senators over the weekend. That's another situation where somebody new enters the equation, and like so much opportunity there for him. We saw a glimpse of him last year. The peripherals were not great, but he did have a decent stretch at one point. Dawes, like with how bad Schmidt has been and Vanacek even worse, I feel stage is set for this kid to maybe make a difference for the Devils. That's another team in the second half of the season that I think we all dream of better things to come for a team like that.
I think for the first time in a while, and I'm just going off the top of my head, we might see a pretty big goaltending trade, just because I think there's a lot of teams out there who need like a guy to solidify their crease. And I was just thinking while you said that, like how volatile the position truly is. Where every year we do our best to pontificate and think about names that are bona fide stud fantasy netminders, and it never works to fruition. Like I wonder in the coming years, and this is our first podcast of 2024, if we adapt our structure strategy-wise when drafting fantasy goalies, Pete, because you just never know what you're going to get with these guys. Like one year they'll be great, the next year they'll be terrible.
You could always pick somebody up off the waiver wire. Look at how good Nedeljkovic has been lately, Joey Daccord, all these no-names coming back in and making a big difference, pushing their starters. I feel like Nedeljkovic has definitely lit a fire under Tristan Jarry, who's been inconsistent, but still has been pretty decent in stretches for the Penguins this year. They're bouncing back of late. But yeah, it's one of those things where you just like kind of, throw away whoever you took in the first few rounds of the positions. Like more times than not, the guy that you pick up off the waiver wire is outperforming the guy. I know Charlie Lindgren got injured. That was unfortunate, but he was outperforming like most of the top 10 goalies in the league prior to his injury.
It really is bizarre, honestly. And I always say this, and I date it back to like the 90s, early 2000s, where you had Marty Brodeur on your roster, and you're like, okay, I'm good for 75 starts in my fantasy season. He was a bona fide first-round pick. It's just the way I think about goaltending in fantasy hockey is just so different. You look specifically, Pete, as I referenced that Minnesota's crease. Philip Gustafsson's banged up now. Will miss at least a couple of weeks, they're saying. More may be coming on Tuesday on his front. But obviously the in-house replacement, Marc-Andre Fleury. They're 11-5-0 now in 16 games under John Hines. Externally, I got Daccord on my list. I got Scott Wedgwood with Dallas. Kirill Vejmelka's played much better with Arizona lately. And Alex Lyon's back for Detroit, right?
That's good news for Detroit, and Detroit has a game against San Jose that they really need to win in a big way. I mean, they've gone from like fringe playoff team in the third spot in the Atlantic around the time of the Kane signing to, holding on for dear life here. So hopefully Lyon gives them a spark. And then also keep an eye on, we were talking about, Nick, some of the players recalled mid-season, in recent years, like it happened with Shesterkin. It happens with different guys at different times and really lights a fire under the teams. Nashville had Yaroslav Askarov, a player we've liked in their prospect pool for quite some time, came in, got his first win. Keep an eye on him. I know Saros is there, but the Preds have been a big surprise. And then also, like if Gustafsson's going to miss time, right, that Jesper Wallstedt is another one of those kids. If he gets called up, if he sticks in the NHL for a period of time, could be a difference maker in fantasy.
Yeah, that's one thing I was looking at. I believe he is battling an injury right now, So Wallsted's a guy, definitely, like in fantasy circles, a name you have to monitor at the very least. The other name I would throw out there is the whole Ilya Samsonov situation. You can go ahead and drop him if you haven't already. I mean, he's been put on waivers, now cleared in the American Hockey League. But the name to watch for in Toronto, and this is a deep, deep sleeper, could make his NHL debut on Wednesday, is Dennis Hildeby. He's 6'7", 22 years of age, a fourth-round pick in 2022. He's had a pretty decent year in the AHL. His first true pro season, 2.20 and 919. Could make his debut against the Ducks on Wednesday. But again, this is a deep flyer, and you have to be careful with Toronto prospect netminders. Everybody thinks they're Dominik Hasek, which they're not.
It's crazy for Toronto, like that they might have to. I don't know what the status is of Joseph Wall, but I haven't heard much lately. I mean, that's a team that needs to make a trade to address the goaltending, but doesn't have the cap space. And we all know who they have to sign next year, Nylander. It's just it gets even tougher to field a formidable roster. At least the cap's going up a little bit, but also Jersey, right? Like if anybody's going to be in play, you mentioned it for John Gibson a million times, but I guess the Ducks are always waiting for the right deal if they're even shopping him. But you can see right now 2 of the top contenders in the East on paper, the Leafs and the Devils, need a goalie, and maybe could be a little bidding war in terms of what they give up to get a player like that down the road.
I was going to say too, like from a fantasy perspective, you're a fantasy owner. I think you want to monitor situations like that very closely. Like a Jake Allen's a name that comes to mind where I think he could be on the move. I mean, to your point, I don't know who in this salary cap world is going to go out there and pull a bona fide move for like a John Gibson right now. There's just no cap space to go around, right, Bobby?
I'd rather shove Davey Satriano in between the pipes than put Jake Allen in there, okay? There's no depth out there as far as the goalies go, Petey.
Maybe they should pick up the David Ayers or whatever.
Yeah,
the guy that beat them the
Zamboni
goalie. That guy still, where's he playing? Like in some
men's league with me.
Yeah.
No, I think in general, again, and this comes full circle to the conversation about goaltending and fantasy hockey. It's just like you look at Vegas win a Stanley Cup with Adin Hill, and I think that's got to be an honest discussion in NHL war rooms right now. It's like, why would we go out there and get a guy who makes $7-8 million when you can catch lightning in a jar, get your Binnington, get your Adin Hill, and win a Stanley Cup. Now, it helps having a blue line, which, again, you look at New Jersey, Hamilton's pretty much done for the regular season. The Leafs, obviously, a work in progress defensively. So that's why the question marks, right?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really talk about that injury update, but that is a major one. I know Nemec is playing big minutes. I know that Luke Hughes was one of the 3 stars of the week. He finally seems to be getting his stuff in order and looking like maybe an elite defenseman for the rest of the season, not to mention in the future where he's going to be a top 5, top 10 guy every single year, almost guaranteed, probably starting next year. But one other guy to throw into the hat in the ring for the goaltending starts right now, Anton Forsberg for Ottawa. After the coaching change, had a great performance the other day against Buffalo, and I think has a chance to emerge as the starter over Korpisalo. Forsberg has been really good for stretches in the past as an injury replacement and stuff like that. You hope he could stay healthy because he could really do something here for a second half turnaround for that team.
So the biggest advice I would give to anybody out there who houses Forsberg or Korpisalo, like they're benched until further notice. Like I have Korpisalo on my keeper league team. I just can't go there and say, hey, I'm going to ride this guy out every start. It's got to be very, very selective. Even in Buffalo, I'm like, I don't know if I should do this. So that's the biggest advice I think we could give. But at the very least, the coaching bump change like works. I mean, just look around some of the other teams, Minnesota, St. Louis, the Edmonton Oilers clearly, and it helps when you have those 2 big boys. Like I think the success is coming Ottawa's way. It's way too late, but defensively, Pete, they have to be the worst team in the league, in my opinion, just eye test. And I just can't go there where I'm starting these guys on a nightly basis. Maybe you have a bit more courage than me, though, man.
Yeah, Buffalo's probably worse than them defensively, but you might be having that conversation between those 2 teams for sure. And then as you look at another coaching change beneficiary, I'm not super high on him, but he is like sneaky productive. He was last season as well. Marcus Johansson for the Minnesota Wild. And it's a good line with Boldy and Eriksson Ek. Like that's a really strong trio, and he could benefit over that. And Minnesota has a great record since their coaching change. I know that Kaprizov and Gustafsson got banged up, but if Kaprizov's missing any time here, Johansson could certainly take advantage there.
Yeah, he's the name I have on my list. I just wonder how Minnesota's staying afloat without Kaprizov, without Gustafsson. Like, this is not the same Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, he's not going to mask your issues anymore, and Kaprizov by far is their best player. I just mean offensively what that means to for Minnesota. It's got to be 2-1 hockey across the board. I just don't know if they have the guys, but I think obviously internally, Johansson, I'm happy you brought that, Nate. Externally, if you're looking for replacements to Kaprizov, Michael Bunting, 8 points in the past 8. Nick Paul, 8 points in the past 6, and Warren Fogle, 9 points in the last 6, as we brought up. But what's your general read, Pete, on Minnesota, their futures appeal? Like, I feel way higher about them a couple weeks back, obviously with Hines taking over, but Kaprizov healthy, Gustafsson healthy. I think it's a tough stretch for this team right now.
I mean, there's not a lot of spots to pick up in the West now, right? Like, you would assume maybe Nashville comes out. St. Louis is playing well since their coaching change. I don't think they get in. Arizona, I hope gets in, and I think they're capable of that. But like somebody's going to come out, right? If the Seattle Kraken come back into the mix, you expect damn well sure that the Oilers would get back in the mix. And, those are the top four teams, not even including Seattle in the Pacific. So like there's just not a lot of room. So these injuries, although Minnesota has battled through injuries before and stayed in the mix, these could sink this team just because the standings are so tight.
It's going to be very difficult. There's no doubt about that. Delivered by our good friends over at Skip. A lot of questions and statements about Seattle, so I'm happy we covered that. One guy asking if we should drop Connor Ingram, pick up Joey Daccord. I would say yes. I think you have to ride the hot hand when it comes to goaltending right now. A lot of Foegele love and McLeod love as well.
What about Burakovsky? Somebody was asking about him. He's not playing big minutes since coming back from injury for Seattle, but he is back, and he has been like really top-level performer from the Avalanche days near the end of his tenure there. And then, I think that like depending on lineup placement, Burakovsky could catch fire at some point, and someone was asking about that in a fan question delivered by Skip.
Yeah, I think buy time on Seattle. Like I am sort of feeling them in the second half of this season. I think there's some guys who can provide value. Vince Dunn, Burakovsky, obviously the regulars in that lineup too. Matty Beniers bouncing back here in a sophomore slump type of start to his season. So certainly I would look there. Max Pacioretty, Pete, we're expecting him to make his season debut coming up on Tuesday. Long awaited. Wonder if that boosts Alex Ovechkin. Obviously a very turbulent start for him, but I must say the Capitals, really, really impressive stuff. I know I put this out on New Year's Eve where the conversation this time last year, how could they let go of Vanacek? How could they let go of Samsonov? And it looks like they made the right decision because the goaltending is the big story in Washington this season, right?
Right. We keep hearing that Pacioretty is going to come back, and then it keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah,
like if
it scares me a bit.
Tuesday, it's going to be Wednesday. They said last week maybe it'll be Friday. It wasn't. Maybe Saturday. It wasn't. So that gets me a little
concerning for you?
Yeah, just to put a lot of people have like important players stashed right now, and they're activating Pacioretty ahead of this return. It's just, I might lean with somebody else if you're stashing players and stuff like that, just because this is a concerning injury situation to say the least.
Looks like the Capitals are looking at the same scans that Dr. Bob's been looking at and pushing Pacioretty back. I want to see Pacioretty get out there. And I know a lot of fantasy owners are banking on this Pacioretty to come back and score goals because that's what he's done his entire career. But that Achilles, Nick, like you said, 35 plus, not easy.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think there's going to be this perception that you scoop up Pacioretty, he's going to be that guy who scored in Montreal and in Vegas and in a very, very select few games with the Carolina Hurricanes. But I think you have to temper them. I just think, Pete, like I've been talking about this guy a lot the last month because at this point in the fantasy season, there's not many names out there still on the waiver wire who could actually last for rest of season purposes. And I think the name brand aside, the fact that he's going to have attachment to the Ovechkins and company on the power play, there is opportunity. But I think Bob makes an astute and fair point. I mean, that's a very, very difficult injury to come back from, but never mind a second one in 2 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would, fade at least at the beginning. I guess if you're in a really deep league, you gotta take a plunge and just hope it works out health wise. But the shot volume's always there with Pacioretty. The goals, I think 6-time 30-goal scorer in his career, and then the hits are usually there. But again, he's gonna probably have like a sheltered role offensively, a lot of offensive zone time. They're not going to rely too heavily on him. He's probably not going to be throwing around the body as much as he has in his career.
Pete, our friends over at Skip are throwing some tasty dishes today, the first episode of 2024. Here's a good one. Ovi or Kyrou, rest of season. Is that a serious question? Because we sort of pimped Kyrou when Bannister took over, but he's been really good. After the old emotional breakdown after that game with Berube, he's really picked up his big boy pants and played really good hockey. But I'm still leaning Ovechkin. How about you?
Yeah, I would go Ovi too. I trust the team a little bit more. Again, I expect the Caps to hang around whether they're scoring goals or not. The Blues, I don't have much faith in all facets of the game. So I would go with Ovechkin there. And again, it could be a power play ripple effect if Pacioretty's out there too. So, and it could just be an overall boost, some pressure taken off Ovechkin, like a lot of different ways it could work out if Pacioretty gets back in the lineup and stays healthy.
Petey, I didn't get a text here from Davey Satriano, but he was pumping Timo Meyer big time, and then Meyer got hurt again, man. Like, where are you in the Meyer conversation? Like, I know it was fading since day one when he joined them, and just too many cooks in the kitchen, in my opinion, in New Jersey. But like the Meyer train, like, it's crazy how he was such a valuable asset in San Jose, but now you go to New Jersey, he's like an afterthought and just can't stay healthy too, right?
Yeah, it's a player because of the high floor and category coverage that you're just reluctant to ever drop from your roster. But certainly if he's out for a period of time, shelve him on IR and look elsewhere. Even within the division, like Philly has so many different guys to choose from. Pittsburgh, like I said, back-to-back wins against the Islanders. That was eye-opening, I think. And you can look at Pittsburgh for a pickup right now, whether you're looking offensively. Rickard Rakell, top line, has been productive, I think, points in 4 of his first 6 games since coming back. Also, Marcus Pettersson has been dishing out assists left and right. The 4-assist game against the Isles, and he has a couple other multi-point games lately as well. So look at Rakell or Pettersson.
It's hard to find defensemen right now in fantasy. Like, I was looking the other day, I keep going back to the Thomas Harley-Well. Like, there's no depth. There's no depth. A name we brought up last week, Chris Letang, has stayed red hot for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I think if you can trade for him, like at this point in the season, you're probably headed the trade route, right? If you want to, bolster your blue line a bit here, no?
Yeah, I mean, keep an eye out for some sneaky names. Like I know Seth Jones is still out for Chicago, but like when he comes back, he could see improved play whenever that is. Matt Grzelcyk came back the other day from injury, 1 assist, 5 shots on goal. That's a player that they like to throw on the power play one time or another, through the years. And I know Charlie McAvoy is playing, but he's just banged up left and right. Like he's already dealt with injuries this year, but I think he's playing banged up a little bit. So maybe Matt Grzelcyk picks up the slack a little bit for the Bruins.
NHL.com/fantasy for the entire waiver wire list. I got a couple more mailbag questions. Why don't we look at the schedule? I know Bobby's favorite part of the waiver wire episodes is the schedule for the upcoming week. So we're looking at January 1st to January 7th. 13 on Tuesday, 2 Wednesday, 13 Thursday, 3 Friday, 12 on Saturday, and 4 on Sunday. A grand total of 48 games this week in the NHL. The 4-game teams in terms of the waiver wire that you want to look at: Calgary, Chicago, Washington, Winnipeg. That's 4 teams, and 2-game slates: Buffalo, Edmonton, Seattle, St. Louis. Also 4 teams with a 2-game slate. And Pete, I don't know if you missed it, but New Year's Eve, the big celebration wasn't about ringing in the new year. Jonathan Huberdeau picked up a point. Great to see. Great stuff.
I saw something. Someone said that Nathan McKinnon has like 27 points since he last had his point. I mean, that puts it in perspective. It's not too long ago that Jonathan Huberdeau was like literally second in the entire NHL in scoring. So he's fallen pretty far off since then. But hopefully, I feel like Calgary's playing decent. They're hanging in games. I'm not saying to get in on them in fantasy, but betting wise, like, I feel like they surprise me every couple of days. They win low-scoring games. Sometimes they win high-scoring games. So just keep an eye out for those Flames, especially if Huberdeau gets going.
A couple things I really bombed at in fantasy this year: Jack Campbell, clearly, and Jonathan Huberdeau. I thought there was going to be a bounce back, and there hasn't been a bounce back where we're now celebrating this guy picking up points. Like I don't know what's transpired here. Like we've talked about that mega trade since it happened a year and a half ago. Like Matthew Tkachuk, people are giving him the benefit of the doubt because I think the fractured sternum and all that, but he hasn't had a great offensive start either. It just, again, it's so weird how 1 year a guy could be so great, the next it's just like fall off city, right?
Yeah, and I'll take some responsibility for Samsonov. That was one of my worst picks of the season.
I like the accountability, Pete. I like it.
Having a higher ceiling than last year. I mean, it's just, I got to go take a bath or something after seeing that he got waived a little bit.
At least someone has a little accountability on the podcast. We know Anna likes to deflect. Yeah. Bobby takes accountability when he needs to, and with Connor Bedard, I might have to.
Oh wow, a development here.
But I do want to chime in with a Monday special pick. We talked about this team a little earlier, and I wanted to jump in then. I like the Senators tonight at plus money against Vancouver, which sounds a little odd, but just keep an eye on that. I think that number is a little dicey. I take the plus money there, Nicholas.
A couple things I'm looking at, and that's fair, and I think you buried the lead. Like the Bedard conversation could be a whole podcast, and trust me, we're going to make it into a whole podcast when he just breezes by that number in early February, but nevertheless. Tampa Winnipeg under I like tonight, and I'm going to take a flyer in the Toronto Maple Leafs plus money on the road in LA. The one thing I've noticed with the data the last couple of years, they flip-flop wins. And weirdly enough, and again, I'm going to be way wrong on this, but the puck line, Toronto puck line, for some reason, every time LA and Toronto play, it's always a blowout. It's really, really weird. It makes no sense why the Leafs would win this game, but I'm probably eyeing that, and I think sometimes you got to take your shot, Bobby.
Whenever Nick mentions a Toronto game, because he does the morning take. No. You're pretty sharp with the Maple Leafs, and my antenna goes up anytime you mention the Maple Leafs. Okay. That's a tough one, though. That's a tough one, but interesting. The Kings now are my Stanley Cup pick to win it. Also, the goaltending is going to be an issue there. I don't know if I could trust him, Peter, but I do like that Kings team a lot.
Martin Jones' revenge in that game too.
I like the Kings, but I feel like match them up with any team in the Pacific, including Seattle, and there's just like a lot of, it's a toss-up, like whether they play Vegas or they always lose in the playoffs to Edmonton, right? I'm just saying, like, that path is so difficult, so it kind of like hinders me a little bit in getting too heavy on any of those teams in the Pacific Division.
I watch so much hockey. You guys know this. You guys as well. Over the weekend, I watched a ton of LA. I watched a ton of Winnipeg, man. I am falling in love with the Winnipeg Jets. They're just so good defensively. They play big boy hockey. 2 games against Minnesota. They're rivals. Like, there's fights off the draw. Like, it felt like playoff hockey in late December, which you love to see. They have Hellebuck, and the antennas are going up. It sounds like Winnipeg's after a prolific name out in Calgary. So, I mean, there's a lot brewing with that team, and you add a bona fide top 6 guy into that lineup, they're going to be a scary team here, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, really, any team in the Western Conference that gets in, I would even say, like, if Arizona gets in, they're not going to make a deep run. They might surprise someone in one round.
Yeah.
But other than Arizona and Nashville, like, any of those teams that are getting in, they could win multiple rounds. So it's going to be an absolute dogfight in the West, including the Winnipeg Jets, who have been a huge surprise this year. I was also looking at kind of a diamond in the rough play for Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Columbus is scoring a lot of goals lately. The over 6.5 is plus money against the Bruins. They beat the Bruins earlier in the year 5-2. And I feel like Columbus, like, you can never count them out. They've beaten the Leafs a couple times this year, high scoring games. The Bruins could, maybe get caught by surprise, even though they lost to them earlier. Home ice, the Jackets are a different team. No matter who they're missing Laine, they're missing Jenner. All these other guys are scoring, including Gaudreau, including Fantilli, who's been a stud so far this year.
I've had that game circled too. It's one of those like weird things in hockey where teams play each other difficult. Columbus always plays Boston tough, so I identified that game as well. Some other looks later on in the week. We got another rematch of last year's Cup final on Thursday, Bobby, Florida and Vegas. Golden Knights got spanked in the Winter Classic. I wonder if they come out on home ice and they return the favor, return serve in that one. So I like Vegas against Florida on Thursday.
Rebound.
Yes, there you go. And the other thing, the development of the year, Bobby, San Jose stinks again, man. Like puck line crazy with that team right now.
Yeah, I know Petey holds the Sharks close to his heart, but man, that team stinks.
Yeah.
I mean, Chicago's pretty bad too, though, right? Like, Chicago plays the Rangers on Thursday at MSG. It's going to be cool to see Bedard play there for the first time. I know I already got my tickets with Waiver Wire James for when Bedard, hopefully, if he's healthy, plays at the Islanders in April. So hopefully that game means something for the Isles down the road. But at the very least, I'm hoping Bedard could play, because that's going to be a good showcase for him when he comes
All
out
I'll say is good thing Bedard's good at hockey, because his acting skills just not working right now. There's a commercial playing in Canada. It's like, I can't do it anymore. Anything else to add, guys, before we wrap here, Bobby? Any more plays? He's got one more. Okay, we're going to get Bob looking and activated here. We're going to get this
No, that was my finger up. Give me a second. I got nothing for you guys. I mean, I just want to thank Skip, really. Coming into 2024, we're going to soar in 24 thanks to Skip and my boy Lucas. Happy New Year, Lucas. Thanks for everything you do. Petey, what do you got before we put a bow on it? We're hitting the 30-minute mark. You guys know I like to wrap around 30, so get your thoughts in quick. Right. Who delivered for you the most this week, Petey? Brought to you by Skip. What do you got for me? Come on, off the top of your head. What do you got? It doesn't even have to be a player.
I got the Penguins in a couple of key victories. I mentioned a couple of names, right? Marcus Pettersson with the big assist game in that 7-0 rout against the Islanders, Nedeljkovic, and Rickard Rakell playing up top with Gensel and Crosby. Those are like two of the best 5-on-5 point producers in the league. So Ricard's back in the mix fantasy-wise.
I'm going to go with the Winnipeg Jets. Just I'm feeling that team, Bobby. I said it, right?
Okay. I'll tell you who delivered for me this week. A man by the name of Billy Joel on New Year's Eve at UBS. Oh, my God. Uptown Girl. Wow. Thank you, Billy, for a great show. Thank you, Billy. And Lou Lamoriello, the ghost of Lou was in the arena, right? I felt him. Yeah, I just felt him lurking around. They were on the road, but I still felt the ghost of Lou down on event level.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know you were critical of his portfolio in the past, Bobby. One time you were saying, he hasn't had a new song since 1990 or something.
He doesn't write new music. He doesn't write new music.
I know, but the hits hit deep, man.
I love Billy. Don't get me wrong about Billy, but can the guy write a new song once in a while? Elton John criticized him because he doesn't, might be hitting the bottle too hard. He's not writing new music. When you're that talented... when you're that talented, write a new song once in a while, Nick. Okay, put a bow on it.
Tune in for the fantasy hockey, but you just never know where you're going to get on this podcast. So many thanks. That's producer Bob Bender. I think we're going to take the rest of the week off. And week 14, waiver wire mailbag coming next week. So a lot to look forward to that. Anadu is going to be back in the mix. So again, many thanks to producer Bob Bender. Anything else to add, Bob?
Monday, P. What do we got Monday with Bet365 and the Action NHL collaboration? That'll be coming back Monday, correct, Peter?
Yeah, let's get it going again. I've been itching for that. I mentioned a plus money play. That was courtesy of Bet365 earlier on the Jackets for Tuesday night at home against the Bruins. But yeah, I'm excited to get back in some futures angles with whoever we have on, whether it's Leboff, Nick Martin, Kalinowski was a great pick last week. So hopefully we get one of these guys back next Monday.
Well, we love you all. Appreciate all the thoughts here on the podcast. For Pete Jensen, I'm Nick Alberg. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.